No backbone, no eyes, no internet presence. And yet, they aerate your soil, digest your trash, shape entire ecosystems, and do it all while being constantly stepped on. Yes, worms. The unsung heroes of rot, the original recyclers, the squishy civil engineers beneath your lawn. So what if I told you that every apple core, dead leaf, and squirrel poop you've ignored was probably processed, packaged, and pooped again by a worm? Welcome to the story of life's most underrated multitaskers. This isn't just about slimy little guys who show up after rain. This is about ecosystem architects, digestive masterminds, soil remixers, survivors of mass extinctions without worms. Plants wouldn't grow. Soil would collapse. Civilization would probably smell worse. So before you flick that wiggly noodle off your sidewalk, like this video, subscribe, and remember, we're all just temporary guests in a house maintained by worms. Long before dinosaurs, there were worms. The fossil record shows worm-like creatures slithering across ancient seabeds over 500 million years ago. No limbs, no lungs, just pure tube energy. They burrowed into mud. Pioneered digestion, survived every single extinction event they were. The first to move through sediment, the first to poop nutrients into the environment, the first to casually redefine life as a squishy digestive tract. Basically, worms invented the concept of throughput. Worms don't just live in soil, they build it. How? They burrow, aerates the soil. They eat, break down organic matter. They poop, create nutrient-rich castings. They wiggle, mix topsoil and subsoil. That means better water retention, faster root growth, increased microbial diversity, happier, stronger plants. You know those lush gardens on Instagram? Behind every beautiful bloom is a worm with a digestive plan. Let's talk about worm castings. Not just poop, super poop. 1 teaspoon of worm castings contains more nutrients than an entire handful of soil. Beneficial microbes, enzymes that help plants resist disease. A smell that gardeners call like rain and magic. Worm poop is pH neutral. Odorless, mostly. Biodegradable packaging for nitrogen and love. It's the only feces you can confidently sell at farmers markets in mason jars. And people do. Time for taxonomy trivia. Worm isn't one species, it's a lifestyle. There are over 7,000 species of earthworms alone. They vary in size, from a few millimeters to over 3 meters, yes really. Habitat, desert to jungle to Arctic. Role in decomposition, top celebrities, Lumbricus terrestris, aka the nightcrawler, Icenia fetida, the red wiggler, compost royalty, Megascelides australis, the giant Gippsland earthworm, Australia's dirt noodle. Each one eats, burrows, and recycles at a pace that would make your local municipality weep. Let's set the scene. Ancient Egypt, sand, temples, mathematics, and worm worship? Yup. Cleopatra, queen, strategist, eyeliner icon, issued a royal decree. Harming earthworms was punishable by law. Why? Because she knew what modern agriculture textbooks now confirm. Worms, fertile soil, better grain, Chabrik's empire. They were considered sacred creatures, and fields full of worms were prized like gold. So technically, Cleopatra was the first verified wormfluencer. Farmers throughout history noticed, where worms go, green things grow. Ancient civilizations used worm-rich compost to boost wheat yields in Mesopotamia, olive groves in Greece, rice paddies in Asia. Composting techniques, long before TikTok tutorials were passed down through generations. They didn't have microscopes, but they had eyeballs and results. Worms, better crops. Better crops, fewer famines. Fewer famines, less revolt worms literally stabilized governments. Sorry, economists, the GDP is secretly measured in castings. Fast forward to 1881. Charles Darwin publishes his last book. Was it about finches? Evolution? Nope. It was about earthworms. The title? The Formation of Vegetable Mold. Through the action of worms with observations on their habits. Sexy. Darwin called earthworms nature's plows, intelligent in their own wormy way, architects of topsoil. He even left a raw carrot near one just to see how it would react. This was peak 19th century field science. His conclusion? It may be doubted whether there are many other animals which have played so important a part in the history of the world as these lowly organized creatures. Translation: worms rule. Respect the noodle. WWI and WWManu. While humans bombed each other, worms kept the soil alive. Victory gardens were encouraged across Europe and America. Worm composting became a secret weapon to grow food in bombed-out cities, recycle scraps without fuel, maintain morale with very enthusiastic carrots. Worms didn't fight on the front lines, but they helped feed the home front. They were like tiny, silent veterans, covered in dirt, paid in peelings. Long before eco-friendly became a hashtag, worms were doing the job silently. Worm bins eat paper, leaves, coffee grounds, banana peels, and veggie scraps. Reduce household waste by up to 40%. Create rich soil with no chemicals or smells. And they do it without a carbon footprint, noise, or salary. You feed them junk. They give you perfect fertilizer. It's like the most one-sided friendship in your favor. Honestly, you could be feeding a worm bin right now instead of scrolling doom content. Worms aren't just garden gremlins, they're lab legends. Scientists study worms for aging, regeneration, nervous systems, environmental pollution. Why? Because worms are transparent, literally, easy to breed. Short-lived, full of secrets, especially the Chinerhabditis elegans, aka C. elegans, has B91000 cells, can be frozen, thawed, and still live. Won a Nobel Prize. Okay, technically the scientists did, but still. This tiny worm taught us how cells communicate, how muscles move, and how aging might be reversible. Basically, it's the Steve Jobs of nematodes. Worms in space? Absolutely. They've been on the International Space Station Space Shuttle, Columbia. Chinese orbital labs. Why? Because worms reproduce quickly, respond to microgravity, help study digestion and muscle loss in orbit, are easier to ship than monkeys. Fun fact, some worms on Columbia STS-107 were the only survivors of the shuttle disaster in 2003. That's right. Worms survived a space explosion. They're basically immortal trash tubes. Brace yourself. This gets green. Worm-based toilets, yes, real, are waterless, odorless, mostly, compact, brilliantly efficient. How they work, you go. Worms go to work. Waste is digested into harmless, nutrient-rich castings. End product, fertilizer, not pollution. Used in remote eco-villages, disaster relief shelters, space station prototypes, ambitious backyard sheds, worm toilets are the Tesla of poop. Just less glossy, more squirmy. Not all worms are cuddly recyclers. Some are ecological nightmares. Meat. Asian jumping worms. Crazy snake worms. Amynthus spp, if you want to get Latin about it. These invasive worms devour leaf litter too fast, strip forests of nutrients, alter soil chemistry, outcompete native worms. They're like the fast food chain of the worm world. Quick, aggressive, and environmentally messy. Forests with jumpers suffer. Poor plant regrowth. Drier soil, reduced biodiversity. So next time someone says all worms are good, show them a video of one of these things flipping like a gymnast on espresso. Do worms feel? Debatable. But science has revealed they can. Sense pain, avoid danger. Remember patterns, exhibit stress behaviors. In other words, they're more than just gut tubes. They're sentient-ish. They've even shown changes in gene expression under trauma, which sounds suspiciously close to worm anxiety. Are we saying worms have feelings? Maybe. Are we saying you should apologize before digging up your garden? Also maybe. You heard of agriculture, but are you ready for vermiculture? That's the fancy term for raising worms on purpose and charging people for their poop. And guess what? It's booming. Why? Organic farms need natural fertilizer. Urban gardeners want zero-waste compost. Eco-businesses love the green branding. Schools use worm bins as teaching tools. Startup bros are now pitching worm as a service. In fact, 1 pound of red wigglers, Cheddar's 20 hottest to 40. A well-managed bin, hundreds of dollars in castings per year. Add branding like Worm Gold TM, and the sky's the limit. Congrats! We've monetized squirming digestion. Across the globe, worms are now teaching assistants. In schools, worm bins are used to teach biology, ecosystems, life cycles, waste reduction, patience. Why do teachers love them? Low cost, high reward, endless poop jokes, immediate engagement. Wait, it ate that napkin? Also, worms don't bite, pee, or riot. They just quietly turn banana peels into science lessons, and that's beautiful. Worms aren't just in gardens and labs, they've squirmed into entertainment. Dune, the godworms of Arrakis Futurama, Brainworms with job applications? Men in Black 2, those coffee-drinking worm dudes Beetlejuice. Sandworms, terrifying and fabulous adventure time. Sentient worm kingdoms. Minecraft, modded. Worm bosses and bait systems. We've mythologized them as monsters, as allies, as comic relief, as misunderstood dirt wizards. And every time they show up, they're weirdly memorable. Across the world, worms hold symbolic power. In Maori culture, worms symbolize transformation. In Yoruba cosmology, earthworms are sacred agents of life. In Japanese tradition, rainworms signal fertility. In modern eco-spirituality, worms are soil angels. In online forums, worms have fan art. So much fan art. You'll find ceremonies involving compost meditations on worm cycles, stick and poke tattoos of Eisenia foetida, and yes, worm plush toys with 100K followers. We're living in a worm renaissance. You just didn't know it. Believe it or not, there are worm accounts with more engagement than you. Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube feature composting tutorials with Wiggly the Worm. Time-lapse worm digestion, oddly soothing. ASMR worm bin cleaning, weirdly viral. Unboxing worm castings like luxury goods brands. Now sponsor, eco-influencers with worm bins. Zero-waste TikTokers using worm hacks. Cartoons starring worm superheroes. Some even live stream their compost. No, seriously. There's an account called Compost Cam that streams worm bins. 24/7. Welcome to the influencer food web. Let's be real, one day you'll die. And when you do, a worm might show up to clean up after you. Not out of disrespect, but out of duty. Worms are nature's mortuary crew. They decompose bodies, recycle nutrients, prevent disease, renew the land. In fact, without them, we'd be buried in rot and stink and regret. They're the reason forests don't collapse under centuries of dead squirrels. They're not creepy, they're cleaners. Elegant, silent, soft-bodied janitors of the end. Modern funeral options. Coffin, expensive, resource-heavy. Cremation, emits CO2. Eternal crystal urn with Bluetooth? Please stop. But now, there's a greener option. Human composting, with the help of worms and microbes. It's called natural organic reduction. And it works. Steps. Body placed in a vessel with straw, wood chips, and oxygen microbes. Plus, worms get to work in 30-60 days. You become soil. That soil is used in gardens, forests, or memorial trees. You don't disappear. You transform. Worms don't eat you out of malice, they carry you back into life. That's kind of beautiful. Worms don't just recycle waste, they recycle existence. Everything that dies, decays, decomposes goes through worms, then back into plants, trees. Fruit's us. It's a closed loop. You eat fruit, you poop. Worm eats it, tree grows. You eat fruit again. Worms are the backbone, ironic, of that system. They don't believe in endings, only inputs and outputs. It's the most eco-friendly religion you never joined. Your body contains microbes. Breaks down food like a worm. Excretes waste just like a worm is constantly shedding and renewing cells. In a weird way, you're part worm already. Worms just finish what you started. And they do it with zero ego, zero noise, and zero mess, which is more than we can say for most humans. What can we learn from worms? Be quiet, stay grounded. Process things thoroughly. Leave your environment better than you found it. Worms don't need. Praise, credit, clicks awards. They just do the work. If you lived like a worm, you'd eat what you're given. Help others grow. Leave behind good dirt and know when to go underground. That's kind of enlightened. Climate crisis? Worms showed up before it started and might just outlive it. How they help? Worms sequester carbon in soil. Their tunnels improve water retention during drought. They increase plant productivity, which sees more CO2 absorbed. Their castings reduce need for synthetic fertilizers translation. Worms are natural climate tech. Biodegradable, self-replicating, and squishy. They're like tiny green engineers, only they never ask for funding or tweet about it. More and more countries are experimenting with worm farms too. Process municipal food waste, create fertilizer for urban farms, reduce methane emissions from landfills, educate citizens on composting. In cities like Tokyo, Nairobi, Sao Paulo, Melbourne, worms are replacing trucks, incinerators, and waste plants, with bins, and more bins. It's quiet, scalable revolution through digestion. Science is going all in. Studies on worms are now covering Bioremediation, worms that remove toxins. Plastic breakdown, some species eat microplastics. Heavy metal absorption. Biodiversity markers in soil health, medical applications of worm enzymes. Yes, again. There are international worm symposiums, there are university worm labs, and somewhere out there, a PhD student is crying into a worm bin at 3 a.m. We salute you. Worms live everywhere, except Antarctica, too cold. Even they have boundaries. But Arctic tundras, Sahara oases, rainforests, absolutely skyscraper rooftops? Yes, with permission composting toilets on Mars? Not yet, but plans exist. If worms had a passport, it'd be covered in soil stamps. If we're serious about climate food security, circular economies decentralized sustainability, then we need to look down at the dirt, at the digestion, at the simple ancient worm. Not because they're glamorous, but because they work. They worked before us, they'll work after us. And unlike most climate solutions, they don't need Wi-Fi. When all is said and decomposed, when the last compost bin is emptied, when humanity stumbles over its own trash and says, now what? Worms will still be there. Wiggling, digesting, working. No medals, no spotlights. Just quiet, relentless maintenance. They don't need recognition, they need peelings and time. The worm is more than an organism, it is a lesson. It teaches us that change is slow but powerful. Growth comes from beneath, beauty often begins in decay, and purpose doesn't require glory. You don't have to fly, roar, or sparkle. You can just quietly help the world rot better. People say, we're made of stardust. Cool, but let's be honest. You're also made of worm-processed nutrients, of recycled leaves, of apple cores that got munched in the dark, of ancient forests digested by creatures with no eyes. It's humbling, it's gross, it's perfect. You are the product of both cosmic explosions and soil digestion. Duality, baby. So next time you see one squirming on the sidewalk, don't flick it, don't scream, don't ignore it. Give it a gentle nudge back to the dirt. It's working harder than you know. It's doing more for the planet than your latest hashtag. And it asks for literally nothing in return. The worm is not lazy, the worm is not gross, the worm is legendary. This has been It All Started With. Worms, nature's recyclers with no boundaries. If you feel slightly itchy, a little humbled, and suddenly weirdly respectful of that squishy line in your compost, you're welcome. And remember, better be kind to the worm, because someday it might be your landlord.